Welcome to our channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about the causes of intestinal worms. Intestinal worms, also known as parasitic worms, are a significant health concern in many parts of the world. These parasites can inhabit the human digestive tract, leading to a range of symptoms from mild discomfort to severe health complications. Understanding the causes and risk factors for intestinal worm infections is crucial for prevention and effective treatment. One of the most prevalent causes of intestinal worm infections is the consumption of contaminated food and water. In areas where sanitation is poor or where food handling practices are inadequate, worm eggs or larvae can easily contaminate food and water sources. For instance, vegetables grown in contaminated soil or water can carry worm eggs, which are then ingested when the produce is eaten raw or improperly washed. Similarly, drinking water that has not been properly treated or filtered can also be a source of these parasites. This risk is especially high in developing countries or rural areas where access to clean water and proper sanitation is limited. Poor hygiene practices are another major risk factor for intestinal worm infections. Basic hygiene habits, such as regular hand washing, play a crucial role in preventing the spread of parasitic worms. After using the toilet, touching animals, or handling soil, it is essential to wash hands thoroughly with soap and water. Failure to do so can result in the ingestion of worm eggs or larvae, which are often present on contaminated surfaces. Children are particularly vulnerable to this risk, as they are more likely to engage in activities that expose them to contaminated soil or objects, and may not always wash their hands properly. Contact with contaminated soil is a direct route for certain types of worms, such as hookworms, to enter the body. In regions where people frequently walk barefoot, particularly in tropical or subtropical climates, the risk of infection increases. Hookworm larvae, for example, can penetrate the skin of the feet and enter the bloodstream, eventually making their way to the intestines. This form of transmission highlights the importance of wearing protective footwear, especially in areas where sanitation is compromised and the soil may be contaminated with human feces. Eating undercooked or raw meat is a well-known risk factor for intestinal worm infections. Certain types of worms, such as tapeworms and roundworms, can be present in the meat of infected animals. When meat is not cooked thoroughly, these parasites survive and can infect humans who consume it. This risk is particularly associated with pork, beef, and fish. Ensuring that meat is cooked to the appropriate temperature is essential in killing any potential parasites and preventing infection. Inadequate sanitation is a broad risk factor that encompasses many aspects of daily life, particularly in regions with limited access to proper waste disposal and sewage systems. When human feces are not properly disposed of, they can contaminate the environment, including water sources and soil. This contamination leads to the spread of worm eggs and larvae, which can then infect humans through various means, including direct contact with contaminated surfaces or ingestion of contaminated food and water. Improving sanitation infrastructure and practices is crucial in reducing the incidence of intestinal worm infections. Close contact with infected individuals or animals is another way in which intestinal worms can spread. In environments where hygiene practices are poor and people live in close quarters, such as in crowded households or schools, the transmission of parasitic worms can occur easily. Children are especially at risk in these settings, as they are more likely to come into contact with contaminated objects or surfaces and may not adhere to strict hygiene practices. Similarly, pets and livestock that are not regularly dewormed can be carriers of parasites, passing them on to humans through direct contact or through the environment. Travel to regions where intestinal worms are endemic also increases the risk of infection. Travelers to tropical or subtropical areas, particularly those with inadequate sanitation, are at higher risk of encountering contaminated food, water, or soil. The risk is further elevated for travelers who consume local foods that may not be prepared with the same sanitary precautions they are accustomed to. Being aware of these risks and taking preventive measures, such as drinking bottled water, avoiding raw or undercooked foods, and practicing good hygiene, can help reduce the likelihood of infection while traveling. The lack of regular deworming, especially in high-risk areas or among animals, contributes significantly to the persistence of intestinal worm infections. Deworming treatments are an effective way to eliminate existing infections and prevent the spread of worms. In many parts of the world, regular deworming programs are implemented in schools or communities to control the spread of these parasites. However, in areas where such programs are not in place or where individuals do not have access to deworming treatments, the risk of infection remains high. This is particularly true for livestock and pets, which can serve as reservoirs for worms and contribute to human infections. A compromised immune system can also increase the risk of intestinal worm infections. Individuals with weakened immune systems, whether due to chronic illnesses, malnutrition, or certain medications, are less capable of fighting off parasitic infections. This makes them more susceptible to becoming infected with intestinal worms and can lead to more severe health outcomes if they do contract an infection. Strengthening the immune system through proper nutrition, healthcare, and management of underlying health conditions is important in reducing this risk. Not excreting stools regularly is another risk factor that can indirectly contribute to the development of intestinal worm infections. When stools are not excreted daily, it can lead to constipation and a buildup of waste in the intestines. This creates an environment that may facilitate the growth and survival of parasitic worms. Regular bowel movements help to flush out waste, including any parasites or eggs that may be present in the intestines. When this process is disrupted, the risk of worms thriving within the digestive tract increases. Ensuring a diet high in fiber, staying hydrated, and maintaining regular bowel habits are important measures to prevent constipation and reduce the risk of intestinal worms. Lastly, certain environmental factors, such as climate and living conditions, can influence the prevalence of intestinal worm infections. Worms thrive in warm, moist environments, which are more common in tropical and subtropical regions. In these climates, the combination of warm temperatures and poor sanitation creates ideal conditions for the survival and spread of worm eggs and larvae. Additionally, living conditions that involve close quarters, lack of clean water, and inadequate waste disposal further exacerbate the risk of infection. Intestinal worm infections are a significant health concern that can be caused by a variety of factors. Understanding these risk factors is essential for preventing infections and promoting better health outcomes, particularly in regions where intestinal worms are endemic. By improving hygiene practices, enhancing sanitation infrastructure, ensuring regular deworming, and taking precautions when traveling to high-risk areas, the spread of intestinal worms can be effectively controlled. Additionally, maintaining regular bowel habits is crucial in reducing the risk of parasitic growth within the digestive tract. If you found this video useful, like and share this with your friends and subscribe our channel for more useful videos.